they got to ask me for help though. And because whenever you're sitting in a seat with someone and sharing the seat, it blurs accountability. Who's now responsible for that? And so I find that our business coach regularly, if we come in with a people problem and it goes up on the board and we start talking about it, he's like, all right, let's pull up the accountability chart. I want you to show me where you told this person that was their job. Oh, no, that's common sense. Well, there is no such thing as common sense, right? Like if you didn't tell that person that I am holding you accountable for this and this is the deliverable that I expect, then there's just confusion at that point.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Eliot Vancil. He is a Texas-based entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience building and scaling businesses across telecommunications, technology, and energy logistics. He has founded and exited multiple companies, including NextSys and Network Logic, and currently serves in a leadership role at Fuel Logic, a nationwide fuel delivery company supporting fleet fuel, construction, industrial, and data center clients. His focus is on driving recurring revenue, operational excellence, and scalable growth. Congrats on your success with Fuel Logic, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here, Carl.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you because I think you're one of the great people to talk to about how to build a company that actually runs properly when it comes to especially things like culture and accountability and inspiring teams to deliver predictable results, which seems like something that is out of reach for so many organizations these days. And so I'd love to hear more about how you built that culture and got those results with Fuel Logic, because it's one thing to hear someone who understands the theory of it versus someone who's actually doing it today for their business. So please tell me more about how you built what you have at Fuel Logic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I built it with a lot of mistakes over the past 25 years. To be completely honest with you, I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. My first company was a company called Network Logic, and just a little bit of history on that company. I grew up as a poor kid. I'm an industrialist type of a person, and so I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. But I looked up in Network Logic a few years into that company, and I realized that I'd built a company that had no foundation. We had 70 employees. It was just a tower waving in the wind, and everyone was miserable working there, but nobody more than myself. And so over the next 20 years, probably, I've really spent a lot of time focusing on building teams, building leadership, and having great culture. And because if nobody wants to work here, it's just a miserable place to be. And so that's you asked how. I've done it wrong a lot of times, and spent the last many years trying to get it right.
Yeah, I think that's obviously making mistakes and learning from them is a great teacher, and it's commendable that you were able to recognize the mistakes you made and own up to them and be held yourself accountable so that you could fix it and not make those same mistakes in the future. So what were some of the mistakes you made and how did you address those with Fuel Logic?
Yeah, and so early on, I joined a peer group at the urging of my leadership team, and I'll never forget. This is probably 2005. I joined this leadership team, and they came in, and after they got to know me for a few months, one of them made a comment to me, and he said, "Hey, you're a pretty impressive guy. You've done a lot, but you're not going any further because you don't develop people, and you don't develop leaders." And so that really stuck with me. And so I just, over the next few years, I really, we started using a business operating system called EOS. And EOS really helped me to start to build the foundations of great vision, right? Why do we exist? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And then getting your team all on board with where you're going. And getting the right people on the bus, I think, is one of the most important things. And it helped me to understand that I've got to define my core values, just so that I can make sure that the person that I'm talking to shares those same core values. And so you might have 100 core values or something, but we need to boil them down to the 5 most important values that define you, right? And then we need to fill the bus with people that share those same core values. And someone who doesn't share my core values isn't necessarily a bad person. We just don't share the same values. And I found in my personal life and in my business life that if I'll just stick to that principle, not hire people that don't share the same values, and then if I accidentally hire one, get them off the bus quickly, right? And then that's your ticket to get onto our bus, is sharing the same core values. And then once we get you on the bus, I'm a habitual, what they meant that I don't develop people and I don't develop leaders is I'm a habitual seat sharing micromanager. That's my DNA. And so I had to learn really how to get the right people, identify the seat that they're going to sit in, make sure you define exactly what they're accountable for in that seat, and then make sure they're uniquely suited for those challenges, right? Those things that you're going to hold them accountable for. We use disc profiling. We use several different tools to make sure that if we're asking somebody to be incredibly detail oriented, in the disc profile world, you don't want to hire an I personality that's an interpersonal personality to be that person. And so we spend a lot of time just really focus on getting the right people, making sure we have insane clarity on what we're asking them to do and asking them to be accountable for, and make sure that we've actually spent enough time with them and really studied them enough to make sure that EOS calls it the God-given ability to do the job, right? Make sure that that's in their DNA to do that job. And I think that that's where it starts. And, EOS helped me a lot. I run every business that I have today, every business that I've had since 2005 has run with the EOS operating system. And that's really helped us a lot.
Yeah, we talked about hiring, and you said you focus on getting people that share those core values and really hiring for that. And then if they don't end up really having those same values, getting them out of there quickly is something that is not the way most companies are hiring these days. So much of them are doing hiring for skills and aren't even able to quantify what their own values are, let alone if someone else shares them. And so they're bringing all these people together that aren't able to work well together because they're not caring about the same things, and it really leads to dysfunctional, toxic environments where people, like you said, don't want to work. And
Yeah.
so I think that hiring for fit with the culture and then knowing what your culture is in the first place is important. And then like I said, having the right skill set and match for the job, and really clarifying who's accountable for this. Because I know there was recently an article about companies that try and add like AI agents to the org charts and give them names and stuff, and suddenly the accountability drops. There's like 18% more errors because people say, "Oh, the AI was supposed to do that," and they stop holding themselves accountable for the work getting done properly.
Right.
And so I think, yeah, there's just overall, not just in business, but as in the world, like our culture in general, just a lack of accountability. And so I think
That's a huge
yeah,
word, accountability. And that's actually one of our core values. Our core values are integrity, accountability, team growth, and consistency. And that accountability piece, that's the first thing I tell people when they come into our organization, is that we have a culture of accountability at Fuel Logic. And what that means is accepting responsibility and then delivering on your commitment. And it's amazing if you can just have accountability in your organization, and make sure that people understand that it's not tolerated if you don't have accountability. You can't be here. That how much that just changes things.
and I'm not surprised that you focus on that so much, because as you mentioned, you're prone to being a micromanager. But for you to be able to delegate and let go of that sense of control, you have to know that your people are going to be accountable and you can trust them to deliver when they say they're going to deliver, because that's the only way you can release the not be sharing the seat they're in and trying to
Yeah.
do the work for them. And that's the only way that your company can actually grow and scale in any meaningful way. Because if you're the one that has to come in and fix everything, and you're micromanaging everyone, then if you're not there, nothing gets done because no one
Yep.
has the confidence or feels like it's their job to get it done, because they're always relying on you to touch everything up and fix it all. So if you aren't able to have that accountability, then the person who's supposed to be in the leadership role, it just has a complicated job with a bunch of other kind of assistants that start things but can never actually get anything done on their own because the leader isn't letting them
Yeah.
do it because they don't have the accountability. So
You
it
know what
seems like yeah. Go
I
ahead.
find a lot of times that really there's not clarity on what you're asking your people to do. Because delegating, we call it delegate to elevate, right? And if you're not delegating, you'll never be able to elevate. And that's what those guys were telling me so long ago. And the hardest part about delegating is now you have to have a documented process, right? Now you have to sit down in a quiet room and really think about, like, what are the five most important things, accountabilities that I'm asking this person to do. And if they're doing those things, that I'm going to be happy with them, right? And it's allowing them to sit in that seat and own that seat, knowing that they're going to do it a little differently than you. They may not be able to do it as well as you, right? Maybe 85% of the way that you would do it, but it's letting them own the seat, own the accountability, being there for them. They got to ask me for help though, and because whenever you're sitting in a seat with someone and sharing the seat, it blurs accountability. Who's now responsible for that? And so I find that our business coach regularly, if we come in with a people problem and it goes up on the board and we start talking about it, he's like, "All right, let's pull up the accountability chart. I want you to show me where you told this person that that was their job." "Oh, no, 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 that's common sense." Well, there is no such thing as common sense, right? Like, if you didn't tell that person that I am holding you accountable for this and this is the deliverable that I expect, then there's just confusion at that point. And so, yeah, our organization is very, very structured when it comes to that. Our accountability chart, a lot of, in EOS, we call it an accountability chart, not an organizational chart.
Mhm.
Organizational charts too many times are about egos, right? Like, hey, I'm the CEO.
Yeah.
Um, whereas EOS is the accountability chart. Like, Carl, what are you responsible for in this organization? And just having insane clarity around that. And it's amazing if you'll just spend the time doing that at how your organization will just turn for the better. And not allowing, you can't allow, the other thing, I thought this was really cool. I had a brand new person. It's a two-way street in our organization. And so while I sit at the proverbial top of the totem pole, someone who's been working here for 1 week can come into my office and hold me accountable for the same core values that I'm going to hold them accountable for. And that's tough, man. That's really tough. And I'll never forget, we had to manage a lady out of the organization because there was a core value mismatch. And a girl that had been here 1 week came in and she's like, "Hey, you talk a lot about hiring by core values, managing by core values, and ultimately parting ways by your core values. Which core value was that person deficient in?" And it kind of put me back on my heels because the first time anybody had ever asked me that. Luckily, we were able to defend it. But if you've had to let someone go and they're not deficient in any of your core values, I would argue that your core values are probably not accurate. And so that's how important they are.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing story in a lot of ways. One, that you were able to defend the core values as a reason for letting the person go and not uh, have it be anything hypocritical. But then also the fact that someone who was so new to the company had the ability to and the capability of challenging you to based on those core values to defend your decision, and that had the courage to do that and felt comfortable enough even to being there for a week to
Mm-hmm.
want to do that. And I doubt there are many organizations where someone that new to the business would feel comfortable holding the founder responsible in that way. And it also shows the quality of character that you have, because you're open to, you don't have like the ego getting in the way, like, how dare you challenge me
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
because that response basically undermines everything that you're trying to do with the values. And because so it, not just having that accountability, but also having it be applied evenly and without any ego involved or trying to get in the way of it being applied evenly, is such a critical thing, that especially for founders who so much of kind of who they are is wrapped up in the business and stuff. And so it can be hard to de-inflate or uninflate the ego when
Yeah.
it needs to be out of the way. And so I think that's a great example of what leaders should strive to, how they should strive to show up for their teams. Because when you set that example, that is radiated out through the rest of the team. They realize, hey, this is a real deal. Anyone can hold each other responsible to be
Yeah.
accountable for these things, and it solidifies your ability to grow.
Yeah. I find that I think it was Patrick Lencioni in like the five dysfunctions of a team. He talks about the foundation of the pyramid being trust. And I think that that's where trust is built. And you can't be the parent that says, do as I say, not as I do. You've got to be the example, right? Like if you expect your team to be on time, I have to be on time. If you expect your team to be plugged in and not looking at the clock, just looking at what needs to be done, then I've got to be doing that when 5 o'clock comes around. And so I think it's important to be the example, to be clear in your expectation, and be willing to be held accountable yourself. I, that's the only way, in my mind, that you can have a successful company.
Yeah, because when we have those clear expectations on who's being held accountable for what, and as clearly people are communicating that information, and everyone knows or has that, they have that kind of level, fair playing field, then it one reduces a bunch of uncertainty and the cognitive strain and overload that can contribute if people are not sure who's responsible for what, if they need to be, what they should be doing or how they should be doing it. So those systems and the accountability and the clarity and communication are so key, that, and in ways that compound over the entire team. Because if someone's not clear about one thing, then they're going to might be doing something that is overstepping to someone else's area of accountability, and that can cause more confusion. And so that just permeates and infects the entire organization. Whereas if you're clearly communicating those things, and it's freeing up their brain space to do more productive, creative, relationship building sort of work with clients and each other, and it turns a vicious cycle into a virtuous one, and allows that flywheel to power growth and success in ways that you just can't get if your people are not in alignment in that same way.
100%. I'll tell you another one of our core values that I love. I think that core values, when you just put them on the wall and you never talk about them, you never show up with examples, then they're just words. But when you live your core values, it just is, they're so meaningful. And one of ours is team. And you hear that a lot, right? Like that sounds like just a boilerplate, core value. But what team means to us is, I would rather than have an all-star that really feels like the knowledge that he or she has in their head is what makes them special. They got to protect it, not share it with anyone, because that's what makes them valuable to the organization. I don't like all-stars, right? If you follow football, that's your Antonio Browns and your these guys that are like this. And so we talk about team at the end of the day, that the measure of your success is the success of the people that are around you. Like, how are you building the people around you? We spend so much time talking about that, because if I look at some of the bad cultures that I've had in businesses that I've owned in the past, one specific one, it was a leadership person, and she really felt like her job, what made her look good, was making other people look bad. And I never could get that person to understand that when your team looks great, you look great. And so we spend a ton of time not focused on you, but focused on your contribution to making the team great. Like, where did you share this last quarter? Where did you work with someone, right, to give them knowledge that they didn't have, or to help them grow personally? And another thing that we do quarterly is during our quarterly meetings, we give the floor to each and every person in our organization to give someone a shout out where they went above and beyond and really exhibited, one of our core values, and just a thank you, if you will. And you just when you're living the core values and they're not just words on the wall, that's when it's meaningful, and that's when it impacts culture. It used to be in my older organizations, it was always me making a decision to, hey, we've got to let this person go, or hey, I find that today I don't even have to be involved, because our people will not tolerate people that don't match our core values, period. And so I'm rarely involved, and so that's a beautiful thing when your culture is like that. And we rarely, I can't, we just don't have turnover. And in my older businesses, we always had turnover. We were hiring someone every month, it felt like. And so it's just a beautiful thing. And a team of average players will outwork, that have great core values, will outwork an all-star any day. And so that's
Absolutely.
my philosophy.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Eliot. If you enjoyed
Yeah.
this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to connect with myself or Eliot, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.